Islam is very political. It wants to capture the political system of any country it goes to.
How do you know that?
I lived in a tragedy all my life in Egypt.
In Christianity, Jesus died for us.
In Islam, we must die for Allah.
I feel that the America that I'm raising my kids in is not the same America that my parents came to.
You don't have hatred for the Israelis that killed your dad?
At that time, I had a lot of hatred.
And you lost so much for that fake cause.
I lost my childhood. I lost my dad.
We owe everything to America.
Shireen and Nonie, it is so great to have you here. People are going to be fascinated by how we met and your entire story. I want to start with Shireen because I feel like I'm always dumping on social media for good reasons. It's become such a force of evil in our society. But we got to meet through social media. And so there are some silver linings in some of our activity on social. And I will never forget the day that I received a direct message from you on Instagram, fellow mama bear. And when you introduced yourself and just how you even found PragerU and how you found me, it was just so God sent and so moving to me. Do you want to just describe it to the friends that are watching us?
Well, in the post-COVID world and as a mom, I'm definitely on the same page as you with a lot of fear about social media. But thank God for it because it's connected people like us. And it's helping to shed light. And that's why I reached out to you, because you are a voice of reason and truth in a time where we really, really need it here in America and in my hometown of Los Angeles, especially.
Yes, I know that you're part of the mama bears that follow us, that follow some of the work that we've been doing against the early transitioning of children, the push of gender-affirming care in schools, and you were struggling with some of these issues in your own schools, and that's when you started following PragerU.
Absolutely.
But you contacted me also after October 7th, and you described to me that it wasn't just that you wanted to fight the evil that is done to our own kids, but there's another level of evil that you sadly were way too familiar with. And that's when we really started our conversation and I got to know your mom.
Right. There's a lot of layers to myself and the moms of America because as the daughter of immigrants, America was my clean slate, and the same thing with my parents. So I reached out sort of in desperation because I feel that the America that I'm raising my kids in is not the same America that my parents came to. My parents went from Cairo, Egypt to Los Angeles, California. I love Los Angeles. I love America, and I love my children. And it's mind-blowing what has happened in public education and also just the feeling of America that's changed so much from the time I was a kid to now. And I really want to bring that feeling back and kind of restore the ideals that I had, bring back that feeling of sort of national pride and just hugging your neighbor, no matter where they came from, no matter who they are, and just getting back to the basics of, what makes this country great. And our best resources are the kids, and I'll do everything I can to protect mine.
So here we are, three moms fighting for our kids for a better future, loving America, appreciating America, knowing how many gifts we have just from living here.
Yes.
You and I are lucky that we were born here. Your mom was not as so lucky. Nonie, you had a pretty rough childhood, a very interesting childhood. I'd really love for people to hear more about it. Maybe you can just describe a little bit, where were you born and where were you raised and who was your dad?
I was born in Cairo. And grew up in the Gaza Strip for a few years as a child. The reason I was in Gaza was Egypt ruled Gaza at that time in the 50s. And my father headed the Egyptian military intelligence in Gaza. And their job, the fedayeen, was to just attack Israel. That started in the 50s. A lot of people don't go back to that history of attacks on Israel since the 50s. I grew up with the propaganda, the anti-Israel, anti-Semitic propaganda, horrendous. Most of it were lies. We were told that Israelis want to kill Arab children, and that's why we have to kill them. So they justify the attacks on Israel by claiming that Israel is killing Arab children. And I believed it. I believed all that.
What was your dad's name? And can you explain what is fedayeen for those who've never heard that word before?
Yeah. My father is Colonel Mustafa Hafaz, and he headed the Egyptian military intelligence in Gaza. And the word fedayeen means men who are ready to self-sacrifice, to do jihad against enemies of Allah. Who are the enemies of Allah? Anyone who's not a Muslim are the enemies of Allah. Jews, Christians, pagans, whoever is not a Muslim. And even among Muslims, they consider people who don't follow the Sharia or are also traitors. Like if you don't adhere to Sharia, you don't cover your head, you could be attacked. So this is how we grew up. It was constantly looking at the enemies of Islam, constantly looking for what's behind. Who do we attack next because they hate us?
When you're a little girl, your family moved to Gaza.
Yes.
Was Gaza under the control of the Israelis, and that's why you guys felt like, or your family felt like they had to attack Israel? Or so it was under the control of the Egyptians?
Absolutely.
Why was your dad and the fedayeen attacking Israel? What was the purpose of it?
He was the head of the fedayeen. My father headed the fedayeen. He was one of the founders of the fedayeen. And they were attacking Israel from two fronts. One from Gaza, the Egyptians, and one from Jordan. The head of the fedayeen attacks in Jordan was an Egyptian. A lot of people don't know that. So Israel was getting hit by many fronts. So that was in the 50s. In the 50s, Israel didn't occupy Gaza. Israel didn't cause any trouble on its own unless it's attacked. So a lot of what we grew up with that, it's the Jews who are attacking us, so they can justify the attacks. But the truth was completely lies. It was all lies. I grew up in lies.
Your dad was killed by the Israelis. Is that correct?
My father was a good soldier. He was a strategist in the war. He was a top official. So Nasser put him in Gaza because that was the most dangerous place on Egyptian borders. And he told him, your job is to just destroy Israel as much as you can. That was the job. So he started the fedayeen operations under the instructions of Nasser. And the fedayeen used to go into Israel and kill civilians. They were not just going in to fight soldiers like them. They were going into homes and attacking families.
And that wasn't for the purpose of freeing the Gazans, because the Gazans were not living under the Israelis.
At that time, Gaza at that time was under Egyptian control. If you look at the map of Gaza, Gaza is just a big city. It's a large city, but it's really not a country. It doesn't belong to any country officially. So Gaza was the front line of the jihad against Israel. You have to go through Gaza. And so that's the situation, that a lot of people don't understand, that Gaza is not a country on its own.
You went to school there. What was it like? What was school like in Gaza?
Well, I went to Gaza elementary schools, and every morning my classmates and I would recite Jihadist poetry daily. And the poetry was all about dying and going to war and killing ourselves in the war while we're killing Jews. It was very powerful on me as a child to see all the girls saying this poetry and crying, and like somebody is hurting us. But it's all programming of children. We were being programmed to feel as victims. This is since the 50s. Before, Israel was never occupying Gaza at that time. But Gaza had a purpose from the very beginning. Gaza's purpose was not to become the Singapore of the Middle East. Gaza's purpose was not to do what's in the best interest of its citizens. Gaza's purpose was not to flourish and become a vibrant area of the Middle East. Gaza's purpose was to constantly attack Israel. That is all the purpose of Gaza. And that's what we were told in school as children, that our pride, our purpose in life was to go just kill Jews.
This is just so difficult to hear, how your childhood was just so hate-filled.
Yes.
Did you have a relationship with your father? Were you sad when he died?
Yeah, my father, as much as he was not from that culture, he was an Egyptian soldier. And I found out in some of the paperwork in his office after he died, and we read it. Actually, I read it recently with an Israeli friend of mine. And we were shocked that some of his paperwork was, we want to restrain the people from Gaza who wanted to cross and go kill Jews. Egypt wanted to restrain them. So what seemed to be the situation in Gaza is not exactly what people know about Gaza now. The roots of Gaza is the roots of hate, the roots of propaganda, the roots of lies. And I grew up there, and I know how this developed into today's massacres that are happening today. It happened then, it happened many, many times, and it's still happening today.
There's a story that your daughter Shireen shared with me when we first chatted about how you experienced mercy from the side of the Israelis that really surprised you.
Yes.
I know that there was a first attempt on your father's life,
Yes.
which the Israelis were unsuccessful at. Will you just share that just so I can hear it directly from you?
Actually, because of the fedayeen who were crossing into Israel and coming with pride, saying, we killed 10 Israelis today. We attacked a family in a home with children, women and children. And they were not just attacking, the fedayeen were not just going in to kill other soldiers. They were killing families sleeping in their home. So they used to come with pride about doing that. So finally, what happened is Israel wanted to come and stop the man who was heading all these operations, who's my father. But my father, truthfully, wanted to restrain them. And they came in, Israeli commandos came into our home one night. And I was 7 or 8 years old at that time. And I was sleeping, and I never heard anything. But they actually came into our home. And my mother in the morning was very upset. She probably saw what happened. And they left. They looked for my father. My father, by coincidence, was not home that night. He was in Cairo on a business trip. So they left us unharmed. And I heard something like, my mom, thank God they didn't kill us. Something like that. So I said to myself, if we go brag about killing their families and their children, how come they didn't kill us? I was confused because it didn't add up. The propaganda about the Jews and Israel didn't add up to what they actually did. They didn't hurt us.
How did
So
your dad eventually get killed then? Because
yes,
he was killed by the Israelis eventually, right?
yes, he was. One afternoon, my father was going to his office, and he told us to, "What do you want to do this afternoon?" So take us to the movies. So he dropped us at the movies, my siblings and I. He took my brother with him, and we went to the movies. And while I was sitting in the movie theater, I heard, like from far, a kind of a bomb. But since you live in Gaza, bombing is not unusual. So we continued to watch the movie. And then there were two soldiers with us. They came and told us, "Let's go. We have to leave now." And I remember I was telling them, "But I want to finish the movie. I don't want to leave." And they said, "No, we have to go." So we left. We went home, and I saw my mom crying. And I understood that there was a bombing in my dad's office and he's hurt. In the morning, we were on an airplane to Cairo.
Mm.
At that time, he died in the morning while we were on the airplane. And I went to my grandparents' home, and that's when we knew that he passed away.
You don't have hatred for the Israelis that killed your dad?
At that time, I had a lot of hatred because I believed that they wanted to kill Arab. I believed all the propaganda that they want to kill Arab children. They want to hurt us. That's all I heard. So I hated Israel, of course, and just the word Israel scared me, like it's a monster. That's how they show us. Actually, I remember in Egyptian newspapers there are cartoons, and they used to show Golda Meir with blood coming out of her mouth, and she's like a monster. So, and they were very similar to Nazi propaganda against the Jews. They put some of the pictures of the cartoons in Egyptian papers and in German papers in the old days, and they were identical.
Wow. So you then came back to Egypt and your mom raised you and your siblings in Cairo. What was your life like then? What were you doing? And
It was very tough because life without a husband for a woman in Egypt at that time, it's hard to go out and in without a husband. So I remember my mom suffered a lot after she lost her husband. And of course, us losing our father. It was really, it was a tragedy. I lived in a tragedy all my life in Egypt. As a child in a war zone, constant bombing, and then you lose your father, and then you go back to Egypt, and then the 56, the 67, and the 73 wars with Israel. My whole life was just a series of wars with Israel, or periods of just preparation for the next war.
but don't you feel like it's Israel's fault that you had this terrible childhood and difficult
At that
life?
time, I believed it. But now, after I grew up and I heard the story from the other side, and I wanted to know the truth. I didn't want to know what I want to hear. I wanted to know the truth. So when I came to America, I really read a lot about the Arab-Israeli conflict, and I had a lot of Jewish friends. My first job in America was given to me by a Jewish man. He owned the company. He interviewed me for the job, and I worked there. And I didn't know he was Jewish at the beginning. And mind you, I had just arrived from Egypt.
Were you terrified?
At the beginning, I said, "Oh my God, he's Jewish. I hope he doesn't discriminate against me," because I thought, because we discriminated against Jews, that it's mutual. It's the same thing. And then I noticed that he's such a nice man, and he offered me a job, and he knew where I was coming from, and I said, I have to know the truth for myself.
How do you know what is true and what isn't true? I mean, I'd imagine some people listening would say, well, it sounds like the Jews have been brainwashing you, or that you've been reading books written by Americans. And so you're picking up the lies.
I look for facts. I look who started wars. I look who started the propaganda of hate. I'm a truth seeker in my character in general. From the very beginning, since I was a kid, I resented, for instance, things in Egyptian culture that was cruel, and I resented that. I even things that are in my home that were cruel. I resented the bad treatment of maids, for instance. It's very common in Egypt at that time. I don't know about Egypt now, but people who are poor are oppressed by whoever is above them. It's a class culture. There is a lot of beauty in Egyptian culture. I don't want to be misunderstood. Egyptian people have a lot of good sides and decent side and kind, but there's a lot of, every culture has something to learn and have something to be better in. And I think the oppression of the oppressed is a little bit a challenge in Egyptian culture.
So when you arrived to the United States, you were kind of open to understanding where you came from and why you felt, I guess, in some ways like a mismatch over there.
Yes.
Kind of wanting to look for good, right? I'd imagine.
Absolutely.
I mean, for my family too, when they moved to the United States, this like breath of fresh air, of freedom and opportunity. I think it's why we're so obsessed with this country, especially if you're an immigrant. You really know, if you're an immigrant practically from anywhere around the world, you realize what a gem the United States of America
and
is.
Unfortunately, a lot of people forget after they move here.
Yeah.
A year or two after they move here, they start becoming like, oh, my culture of origin is this or that.
Yeah.
And it's almost like wanting to deny that America is a blessing. I always remember that America is a blessing. I don't know how my life was going to be if I didn't come to America.
And you would have never had
You probably
me.
would not have had Shireen.
You would not have had your kids.
Well,
Absolutely.
So you moved to the United States, coming from a Muslim family, and you ended up marrying an Egyptian Coptic Christian, and then you had Shireen. Shireen, maybe you can talk a little bit about your father and some of the things that you've learned from him and his family.
Absolutely.
Why did your father's family come to the United States?
Well, my dad, I describe him as an Egyptian cowboy. And I love my mom so much. She's my greatest hero. My dad is as well. My mom was born and raised as a Muslim, and my dad, Coptic Orthodox Christian. And under Sharia law, they would not have been able to get married in Egypt because it's illegal.
It's illegal for a Muslim woman to marry a Christian man. Illegal. If they'll put you in jail.
But a Muslim man can marry 4 non-Muslim wives.
As long as they take on Islam at home?
Correct.
As long as the kids become Muslim.
But by law, my father could not marry my mother. They met as journalists in Egypt at the at the Middle East News Agency. And thank God for America. I owe everything to America. My parents came here, I had my brother and I have a younger sister as well. And my parents just, they instilled the values in us that we owe everything to America.
Did your dad ever talk to you about what life was like for his family as Coptic Christians in Egypt? I don't think we hear that much about it.
Yeah, my paternal grandfather had to change his last name in Egypt because it sounded too Christian. Not even their name, just their name alone. was a sign. So they had to erase that and adopt a name that sounded something, in the middle, a neutral name that wasn't Islamic, but it wasn't Christian. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of baggage. I know my dad has never been back to Egypt, and I think that speaks volumes because he never wanted to go back.
One of the reasons why these kinds of conversations are so difficult is because I'd imagine that, like you, as it is with me, people will start labeling you Islamophobic or anti-Arab if you say anything critical whatsoever of any country in the Middle East aside from Israel. You're considered an Islamophobe. It's really not in vogue to speak critically. Do people call you like anti-Egyptian or anti-Arab when you say the type of harsh things you're saying?
Arab culture is a culture that's based on pride and shame. So you should always be proud of your heritage, and it's a shame on you if you criticize it. So self-criticism is not one of the values that we learn as we grow up in the Middle East. It's criticize the other, criticize Israel, criticize the Jews, criticize the Christians, criticize people who are not 100% pro this or that. So I understand why they view me like that, but I really have I see a lot of beauty in Middle Eastern culture and Arab culture in general. But at the same time, I see the horrendous oppression of other religions and other people who are different.
It took my mom a long time to figure it out. I remember as a 7-year-old here in Los Angeles, my mom taking us to visit a mosque. And I was wearing a top just like this. And I remember the dress. And when my mom took us to visit, because my mom was born and raised as a Muslim, and she came here and she took us to a mosque.
A chance.
I grew up half Christian, half Muslim to a certain point. And when my mom took us to the local mosque here in Los Angeles, they looked at me and said, "Don't bring her back with this shirt. And it's a good idea to wear a headscarf." And my mom said, I never wore a headscarf in Egypt. In fact, none of my family have. And they said, well, we're not here to assimilate. And my mom...
The message was don't assimilate in America.
And don't bring your daughter back with her arms showing. Come back with a headscarf and her covered. And my mom said...
When I saw this, the purpose... The message is don't assimilate in America. I never wanted to go again.
Yeah.
Because that's not why I came to America. I came to America because I appreciate this culture that gave me freedom and gave me so much. So why hate it when I'm living in it? So I stopped going to the mosque and I lived without any spirituality in my life at all for a long, long time.
Well, is it possible that at these mosques here in America, what they mean by not wanting you to assimilate is that they don't want you to stop being a Muslim, but you could still become an American? Or is it that they don't want you to become a Christian? Maybe that's what they mean?
I think it was more than that. It's like we have to teach them to become Muslim, not they teach us the freedoms in America or whatever. I mean, if a person actually goes to the mosque, it means you're still respecting your religion. Mm-hmm. So why tell them don't assimilate? You can say it in a different... I didn't like the way they said it. They could say, we're here, we love America. They could have said, we're here, we love America and all what America is giving it to us. But let's not forget that we are still Muslims and we're proud of our culture. If they had said it this way, I can understand. But don't assimilate has, first of all, to live in a culture without assimilation takes a lot more energy from a person than if you assimilate. Mm-hmm. Because the norm is you become part and parcel of the society around you. If there's a language, you automatically start learning it. If you live in France, you will eventually speak French. So for them to tell me don't assimilate, that will take a lot of energy from me. Mm-hmm. that against the tide. So I felt I didn't feel that I liked the attitude.
I visited a second mosque out of state, and they said in no uncertain terms, the parishioners there, that Sharia law would be brought to America. Period. Eventually, it would be brought to America, and they were happy to usher that in. And I very quickly had a suitor who wanted to put a ring on my finger after just no time of being there. I mean, they were very direct in every way possible in finding a wife and kind of claiming what they wanted America to be. And the woman that said that was actually on a student visa.
Actually, it's very political. See,
religion?
Yeah. Islam is very political. It was to capture the political system of any country it goes to. Like if you're a Jew or you're a Christian and you go to a country, you really don't care about controlling the political system. Islam, number one purpose when you go to a country is to control the political system.
How do you know that? Is there proof in that? Is it in
Quran? Oh, yeah. Part of the laws of Islamic law, Sharia, is to never live under an un-Islamic political system.
Wow.
To live under an Islamic political system is the only kosher way to live under Islam.
Wow. You talk a little bit about discrimination, the experience that your father's family experienced as Christians in Egypt, and the discrimination against the maids or the housekeepers, even the women. There's a conversation right now happening around the world about discrimination that the Israelis or the Jews are doing against Christians, Muslims in Israel. There is a pastor who lives in Bethlehem in Israel. It's under the Palestinian Authority, Reverend Isaac. And he went on Tucker's show and talked about the discrimination that they're experiencing as Christians by the hands of the Jews. And I'd love for you, given the experience that you have, to watch this clip and just educate me about it.
Where they are constantly targeted by radical groups, radical Jewish groups, let's be clear. Sometimes some churches, there was an attempt to burn them. Oftentimes, and this is, you can look at it on social media all over the place, Christian clergy being spit at by these groups. They write very offensive slogans on the wall. There is strong incitements against Christians, especially in the old city of Jerusalem. So
what kind of slogans? I'm sorry to ask you to pause. What kind of slogans? What kind of graffiti is written against Christians?
We don't want Christians, get out of here. Some of it is very, very offensive, actually, that I can say. A lot of it is calling for Christians, whether Christians or Armenian Christians. It's a small Christian community, part of the Christian community in East Jerusalem. We don't want you here. You should leave. So there are all these incitements against Christians, especially in Jerusalem.
So I'd love to get your comments on it. And before you start commenting, I will say, I swear to you, whatever you say, I just want you to speak the truth. You may think that you need to say something because I'm Jewish. It doesn't matter to me, my religion. I really just want to know the truth. I live in the United States of America. I just want the truth. You lived in Gaza. You lived in Egypt. You visited Israel several times. I think there are very few people who have the authority on this issue as you. And so I wanted to bring you here, just unfiltered truth. What is your reaction to Reverend Isaac's comment with regards to Jewish discrimination against Christians in Bethlehem or in Israel in general?
I think when he was speaking now about the slogans that are written on the walls against Christians, I thought these are Muslims who are doing that. Jews don't do slogans against other religions. I've never seen that. I've never seen Jews hating somebody just because of their religion. They might hate them if they attack, if there is other reasons, but it's not something that I see as the way he speaks.
Right, it's institutionalized by the Israelis.
Yeah, I've been to Jerusalem and I spoke to many Christians there, and they told me they would rather live in Jerusalem as Christians than in any Arab country.
Yeah.
So that speaks for itself. If Christians are suffering in Jerusalem, like he's saying, there is about how many Arab countries? 18, 19, and how many Islamic countries? 54. They can go to, and they are not. So I think I don't agree with what this gentleman is saying. I think, of course, like I said, there is instances of disagreements between any groups, but
our pastor lives in Israel.
Oh, really?
Our pastor moved from Los Angeles, California, and lives in Israel. Mm-hmm. He is a former Muslim. He is Iranian.
He is
living in Israel in freedom, and
he loves it.
And by choice. I myself went to Israel in 2006 as a very confused college student.
Sure.
And I was with a group of all Jewish students. I was welcomed. I was able to freely walk around in all of my favorite historic Christian sites. And I can say for sure and with a lot of certainty that all of the Christians that I know that have visited Israel, including my pastor who lives there, not only feel welcomed, but we are Zionists. And I know many Egyptians who live in Egypt who have gone and visited Israel against the instruction of the media and the government. But they are going from Egypt and various parts of the Middle East to go visit Jerusalem, and they absolutely love it. So I don't know what he's talking about. My experience as a Christian, our pastor, and my mom's experience is actually the complete opposite.
In fact, Shireen, when we are in Jerusalem and walking in
I can tell them the story.
Tell that story.
I have never been sexually harassed or assaulted in America. When I went to Israel and we went to go visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, we had a taxi driver and we specifically asked to be dropped off at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre at the Lions Gate, I believe it was. He dropped us off at the Damascus Gate. And we opened the doors, and I couldn't believe because it was an Islamic gate, the Islamic gate for the old city.
You had your
and
arm showing.
We were walking in, and it was as if I was an alien who came off of a spaceship.
We were Jews. They thought that we were Jews.
Yeah, and Jews are not allowed to go in.
My arms were showing. I looked very Western. We were walking into the old city, and I all of a sudden felt something hit me in the head, and it hit me on the back of the head. And I was like, oh my God, what is that? Then we started walking because we're trying to find the church. And the driver didn't drop us off at the right gate. Mm-hmm. And I felt something else hit me in the head. And I realized that somebody threw something at me. And I was like, oh my God, Mom, somebody threw a piece of fruit at me. And I saw it fall down. And she was like, let's just go to the church. And I was grabbed.
She was molested.
I was grabbed in the crotch by a guy who looked right at me and came up and wanted to have some fun. And my mom, I started screaming.
And
my mom
they thought you were Jewish. Yeah. They thought they were. This is how the Jews are treated, I was telling her.
And I was totally taken off guard. I was hysterical. The guy started running, and my mom started running after him. And I said, "No, Mom, no, don't."
See, because I don't care. I know the culture.
And she wanted to go.
I wanted to go. And how dare you do this to my daughter?
Wow.
That was a first.
But they ran away.
That was a reality check.
Yeah. To clarify, I don't know how many people have visited Jerusalem listening to this conversation, but there are areas that are really, even within Jerusalem, that are managed by
Islamic.
It was
totally Islamic area.
Jews are not allowed to go in there.
Yes.
And so if they thought that you were Jewish.
We went to the Islamic area.
I don't know what they thought I was. I felt like an alien that got out of a spaceship.
Right.
Okay. But I was just an American that got off of an airplane and had no clue what I was walking into.
That whole region is so complicated. And I think one of the things that might help people understand some of this, and even if you can help me understand some of it, given that you grew up there, is Gaza itself and how it came to be. Because there's the West Bank and then there is the Palestinian Authority that really manages Bethlehem, which is where this pastor really lives. And so it's really not managed by the Israelis. And then there is Gaza, which was originally under Egypt. Can you just explain just how Gaza came to be? Because that was around your lifetime while you were living there.
Gaza is a very strange city. It's very unique. It's a city without a nation by itself.
Well, isn't the nation the Palestinians?
No, but there's nothing called Palestine. There is no nation called Palestine, and the word Palestine never existed. It referred to people called Palestinian. Palestine is actually a Roman word. It's not even an Arabic word. And Gaza is sandwiched between Israel and Egypt, and it's in my opinion, it could have been a prosperous area, just like Singapore or any of these Asian wonderful big cities that's thriving with commerce and prosperity. But instead of focusing on this, the Gaza people or the administration of Gaza is focusing only on one thing: to shoot at Israel.
And Gaza was always ruled by Egypt, and the West Bank always ruled by Jordan.
Egypt, after Gaza was created, it was like after the 48 war, Gaza became like a city that doesn't belong to anybody. So Egypt kind of controlled it. And now Gaza became an entity on its own without the control of Egypt. And that's why it became a rogue. It's a rogue city. It's rogue. And look what happened.
I just watched a clip a few days ago of Mohammed Hadid. He was, wearing the whole garb, and he was basically crying and saying, my people have been kicked out of our land, and, we've been here for all this time, and the Jews came in and robbed the Muslims of their land, and now they're kicked out and they can't go back to their homeland.
Where did the Jews come from? The Jews are not aliens from outer space. The Jews came from that area of the world. They came before Islam even was birthed. Jews lived in that area of the world before Islam. It's Islam that kicked them out. The people who say that have no clue about the history of the region. And they are rewriting history to fit their narrative. The truth is, it's the Muslim world. It's us. I came from the Muslim world. It's us who kicked the Jews out and made them go all over the world to find a place to live. And that's the truth. Instead of looking, first of all, look at the number of the Jews in the Middle East. 6 million, 7 million, something like that. It's not a big deal. The whole Arab world is millions and millions of people. I mean, if you count the Jews, you can hardly even see them on the map. Why not just welcome them in their holy land? It is their holy land. It is their holy. If you believe in the Bible, you have to believe that this is the holy land of the Jews.
Absolutely.
If you're a true Christian, You have to believe this is the Holy Land of the Jews. If you're a real Muslim, you have to believe this is the Holy Land of the Jews, because Muhammad himself and in Islam, they referred to that area of the world as the Holy Land of the Jews. So if you are against Jews in that area, you're against Judaism, you're against Christianity, and you're against Islam. That's in my opinion.
What if you're not religious and you just say, well, the Palestinians were there first, so...
No, the Palestinians were not there first. There was... the word Palestinian, like I said, is not even an Arabic word. The Arabs penetrated the area of what is now called Israel. They penetrated, and actually the Jews were kicked out. They wanted to live in a safe place. They couldn't be. They couldn't feel safe in their own holy land.
Are there still any Jews living in Egypt?
Very, very little. No. Maybe 2 or 3 families or something like that. They were all kicked out by Gamal Abdel Nasser after the 52 revolution, unfortunately. And guess what? After the Jews left Egypt, the movie industry collapsed. The art in Egypt collapsed. The industry in Egypt collapsed. The factories in Egypt collapsed. The whole economy collapsed because the ingenuity of many of the owners of these businesses were Jews. And they were kicked out by Nasser.
The brain drain.
Yeah, they were kicked out by Nasser. And Egypt regrets it. I think Egypt regrets it now.
Not too long ago, we released a documentary called Dear Infidels, which had millions of views. To be honest, we got a lot of positive comments, but we also got some very, very negative comments. And I'd love for you to just watch the trailer. You may have watched the documentary before. And I'm going to read to you some of the comments and give you the opportunity to react to some of these comments, because I think that while there's this fight between good versus evil, I think that we need more voices of good and of truth. And especially online, it's become more prevalent to see a lot of voices of evil out there. So take a look at this quick trailer. And for those who are listening in, if you haven't watched the documentary, it's available on our website. Let's take a look at the trailer and we'll comment a little bit.
What I have been trained to fight against is radical Islam. This ideology is willing to bring death and destruction to our way of life.
They had this belief in this greater cause to return to the glory of Islam and install a caliphate.
Extremists, they brainwash you from a very young age. Against the Jews, against the infidels, against America, against the West.
They teach them to murder Jews and Christians, infidels. This is a religious war.
I see the different groups that are protesting to free Palestine. You're showing your ignorance because these people wouldn't accept you.
They believe America, the Western values, they must be stopped, destroyed. You're raising a generation that will change the society from the inside. That anything that is not us doesn't have the right to exist.
We are naive and we have our head buried in the sand if we don't think that is going to come here.
So I'll let you comment first before I read some of the comments from the internet.
Well, I saw these kids at the beginning who are being taught lies and to hate. And that reminds me of myself. That's how my life was when I was a kid in Gaza. That's exactly how I was. just to hate and to want a revenge, and that's the truth, 100%.
Yeah, I look at the college scenes, and I worry that you and I, Shireen and I, are raising kids who are around the same age. In a few years, they're going to be going to college, and everything that you and my parents have given up to come here to America, and all this opportunity, and this, we value education so much, but then to send them to schools that support this which you ran away from, it's unbelievable.
Never underestimate the power of propaganda, and Arab and Islamic propaganda is very powerful. They can turn the victim into the oppressor. I was really disappointed when I saw the college campuses here supporting Hamas. How can that be? How can American kids who are brought up on our freedom and our values to support something like Hamas? It's unbelievable. It's very depressing for me.
I'm going to read to you some of the comments from online. I'm sure some of those comments are still compiling during this conversation right now. Islamic extremism doesn't exist. Thank you, PragerU, but 9/11 was 22 years ago. I am a gay furry on the internet. I don't think you have to demonize me or any Muslim anymore. Other comments, just to...
Well, I can comment on
Yeah,
that.
go ahead.
About 9/11 happened 22 years ago. It was one day, one time, and that's it. 9/11 was an airplane into a building. We all know what happened on October 7th in Israel. They get the body of an Israeli woman on a truck, parading her in Gaza, and people are cheering. They're
cheering on one side and then denying that it ever happens on another side.
It's very strange because when I express some of my support for Israel and I meet Americans and they say, wait, what happened on October 7th? I don't want to know. I don't want to know. And it's like, wait a minute, what?
You have to know.
You have to know. We have to know. Because another 9/11 is going to be coming to America. What if a 10/7 comes to America? I remember 9/11 like it was yesterday. I was 18 years old. And I'm terrified. I'm terrified of another 9/11 happening. But we need to wake up, America, and wake the people up here. There's a very real enemy that's out to get us.
Yeah, and by the way, the reason I'm reading these comments is not because I want to give legitimacy to these furries who are sitting in their mama's basements and have nothing else to do. The reason I'm reading this is because part of the role of what we're trying to do here is educate the public. And so we do read the comments to see that we're, educating people. And it just shows you how we're reaching people who are not part of the choir, who are on the other side, and how important it is that these conversations happen publicly. But I'll keep reading some of these to you because I think it will be really interesting for both of you to comment and respond to some of these things. I mean, we're getting these in the thousands, and people writing in, "Dear Infidels is an Islamophobic psychological terrorism designed to radicalize Christian nationalists into believing they're in the end of times." By the way, they call me a white Christian nationalist Barbie, which is fine. I like the Barbie part. I like the Christian part too. And I'm all about, the United States of America and the sovereignty of our nation. So,
sounds good to me.
Sounds fine. But, what terrifies me more is right-wing Christo-fascism. Apparently Christianity scares them more than Islamic extremism.
Yeah. Christianity never says kill the enemies of Christians. Of Christianity doesn't reward you by sending you to heaven if you kill non-Christians. But that's in Islam.
Isn't that a myth? Some people told me it's a myth and it's not true. The virgins.
Go to the source. I wrote a book.
By the way, your books are amazing and everybody should read them.
I wrote a book about Sharia. It's called Cruel and Usual Punishment. And in that book, all I do is get the law in Islam, in the Sharia books. A law is a law. So if a law says kill, the word kill, non-Muslims, and you will be rewarded for it. It's kill non-Muslims and you will be rewarded for it. So you can argue with laws of Sharia. And in it, everything we say is in the Sharia books.
In Christianity, Jesus died for us.
In Islam, we must die for Allah.
Big difference.
Some of the other comments here are that the Jews are more dangerous to the world than the Muslims.
That is anti-Semitic. That is pure anti-Semitism. What did the Jews do dangerous to the world? What they invented every invention. They blessed the world with so much. What about the Bible? They gave us the Bible. And without Judaism, we will not have Christianity and we will not have even Islam, because Islam came as a rejection of the Bible. Judaism happened with the Bible. Christianity evolved out of the Bible. And then Islam came, beat them both up, and wanted to destroy both. It didn't succeed, but it succeeded a lot in shrinking and controlling the growth,
fruit,
the growth of Judaism. Absolutely.
Radical Judaism is worse. Israeli propaganda, this is propaganda for every Middle East oil war. The Jews are trying to drive another oil war in the Middle East. These are some of the comments. So misinformation, lies, and I'd say that.
Unfortunately, I understand why. When you are living in the Arab world, when you are living under that constant propaganda that there is a boogeyman called Israel over there, and attribute every disaster that happens in the world to them, because, see, there's a lot of corruption in the Arab world. But how do you hide the corruption? By always blaming Israel, by always finding a boogeyman. Tyrannies need a boogeyman. The Arab world needs an Israel.
Right.
You know why? Because they need to hang all their failures and all their shortcomings and all their
self-doubt.
Yeah. It's not just doubt. It's their corruption. They have to blame it on the outside world. Otherwise, the citizens will attack the governments.
One of the things you said to me as you were walking in here was jobs over jihad.
Yeah. The Arab world has a lot of unemployment. The Arab world has a lot of social problems. The Arab world has a lot of poverty. And what they need is not Israel, blaming Israel. If they really love their citizens, they need to provide jobs, not jihad. They need hope for their people, not sending them to blow themselves up.
Shireen, one of your special comparisons that I love is, as you say, less kafiyas, more Levi's.
Yeah. Let's ditch the kafiyas in LA and bring back the Levi's. All of my life, we grew up with, America. America was the coolest. America was the best. And even my cousins from Egypt, all they wanted were guitars, Levi's, and American culture and way of life in Cairo, while holding on to that sort of, Egyptian culture as well. But now all of a sudden it's been reversed.
Well, I'm assuming what you mean by kafiyas is the kafiyas that are a symbol for the Palestinian pro-Hamas thing.
A nation that
we don't need
existed.
Gaza in LA. I'm born and raised in LA, and we need to remember how great LA is. And we don't need the kafiyas at, any of the college campuses here. We need to bring back the Levi's, the white T-shirts, and remember what made us great.
And I know when you visit the Middle East, they want the Levi's, which is, I guess, kind of like your way of expressing
they love
America.
Our music, our movies, our culture. And I think they're probably laughing at what's happening on the college campuses right now.
It's terrified.
It all depends
It's
on
almost a joke. it's almost a joke, really, because I've been to Egypt and because I've been to Israel, and then I see these students, and it's
I want to tell the American kids on college campuses who buy the propaganda of Kufiyya, don't, because you are buying false propaganda. You are buying a fake cause. This is not the truth. The truth, the real truth, is look at the map of the Middle East. From Morocco all the way to Iran, to Iraq and Iran. From Turkey all the way down to Yemen and Sudan. There is no shortage of Arab land. Okay? Israel, you can hardly see Israel on the map. Why do they want this little area that you can hardly see on the map? They don't have a shortage of land. You know why? Because it's a religious holy war against anything that's not Islamic.
And you lost so much for that fake cause. You lost your dad. You lost your childhood.
Absolutely. I lost my childhood. I lost my dad with a fake cause. A fake cause. I believed it. I believed the lies.
Yeah.
And here I am. I come to America, and my first job is given to me by a Jew. The nicest people I meet are Jewish people. A lot of my friends are Jews. Why? Why the hatred of Jews? It just doesn't make sense. And it's time for people from the Middle East to stand up to their own culture and say, no, that is a lie.
When you say, why is there such anti-Semitism or anti-Israel? The question that comes to my mind is, why is the United Nations against Israel?
Yeah.
Why is Hollywood against Israel? Why are so many industries against Israel? Why are so many countries now against Israel?
Good question.
Why?
I'll tell you why. Because the United Nations has 54 Islamic countries or more. And how many Arab countries? 20? 18, 20? And how many Israel do we have? A little one country, Israel, that doesn't even have oil. And Arab countries, many of them have oil. They are rich. So just by numbers, they win. Hollywood, they sell their movies. How many countries, Islamic countries, buy Hollywood movies? They're a lot
and there's
more.
China.
A lot more than just one country
Big
called
markets.
Israel.
So you're basically saying it comes down
It's
to money
numbers.
and industry and business.
Absolutely.
The irony is, people are commenting are saying that, it's Jewish money, Jewish propaganda that's pushing for all of this, but who actually has all the money and the power?
I'm sorry, Arabs have more money than Israel. The Arab world, a couple of the Gulf states are more richer than Israel. So this fallacy that, Jews have money, well, Arabs have more money. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But that's the truth.
I love you, Mom.
Shireen, you're certainly a brave woman. Shireen, I want to end with you because we opened with this whole segment about the fact that we have so much in common. We come from really different backgrounds, but at the end of the day, we are planning on raising our children here in the United States of America. We're practically neighbors. We're peers. Our kids are what matters to us. Our community is what matters to us. What is the final message that we can share with this audience? Many of them are mama bears like us and parents like us who just want good. We want good to win over evil.
I think we have to stop being so polarized. Something that didn't exist not too long ago is we could talk. We could disagree. We had dialogue with each other. And when we can ask questions and learn, that's the most important thing. People are too scared to ask questions now. People are too scared to speak up in America. And I think that's the scariest part. Having authority over my children is something that I care about. eventually they'll be able to make their own decisions and have the freedom that my parents gave me and my siblings. I think right now what's happening, though, is a really scary time for children and parents. And I think we have to reclaim California. We have to reclaim our parental authority over our children. And we can't be too scared to, step up to the plate and stand up to the people who want to take that control from us, because they're not.
Yeah.
They're not. The mamas and the papas are going to fight with everything that we have, because we're up against a tidal wave of PC culture that graduated into the woke crap that we are dealing with on the elementary school level.
Sure.
It's not just the college campuses. There's a war for the minds and hearts of our children in
elementary.
In
kindergarten.
And what I have seen on my son's public elementary school, former public elementary school campus, would alarm and scare anybody left or right. And everyone I've talked to about what's been happening, they had said, this is wrong. So it's not a left issue. It's not a right issue. It's a decent and indecent. So let's just get back to basics in America and take care of the kids.
The problem is what she's saying is so true, because radical Islam takes advantage of what's happening. What this ideology of extreme chaos in America, that makes Islam as we're the answer.
We're so vulnerable now, and our kids are so vulnerable.
The answer. Islam. There is a slogan that says Islam is the answer. Islam is the answer is a slogan. So whenever they see the degradation of Western culture. And the more we do that, the more we allow the far, far left to take over our culture, the more Islam is empowered, because they say, we're the solution now.
Right. They're saying, look at this chaos, and we'll come and clean it up with law and order.
Exactly.
Sharia law.
Exactly.
Right. Well, I absolutely love that the internet connected us, and the fellow mama bears that are following us. I love you all. I love you. And
for everything you're doing.
The other moms, I believe that this is our moment. And I think that what really brought us together is our uniting vision of children's innocence, right? Protecting our kids and freedom, which is really what we're here for, that freedom that America gives us. And so, welcome to PragerU. It's lovely to have you both.
It's
and
my
God
pleasure.
Bless you, and thank you for what you do.
I'm a fan of PragerU.
Thank you. Well, we're a fan of yours, and anybody who wants to learn more, you're prolific, so much to read. So, I'm sure people are going to just grab your books. We'll make sure that we put in the description where they can get them. And, thank you.
Thank you.
Keep on rocking in the free world.
Yeah, as long as we can.